All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Wilson, and I am the business teacher at Argonia Public Schools in Argonia, Kansas.
I'm Jacob Richardson. I'll teach business and technology classes at Valley Center Middle School in Valley Center, Kansas, which is just north of Wichita. That's a better frame of reference for everybody.
My name is Kendall Rooney. I'll be teaching business at our local high school in Lewisburg, Kansas.
My name is Jeremy Hansford. I am the business teacher at Chase County Unified School District 284.
I'm Shanie Adams, and I teach business high school at USD 339 in Winchester, which is Northeast Kansas.
Jill Buettgenbach, and I teach business classes at Valley Center High School.
I'm Kelly Heim. I teach business at Easton 449, just outside of Leavenworth, Kansas.
I'm Trey Sleep, and I teach business economics at the high school at USD 470 in Kansas City, Kansas.
I'm Logan Fritz. I teach business courses at Easton 449 as well with Kelly.
I'm Madison. I'll teach business at Wichita West High School.
I'm Andrea. No, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Okay. I'm Jenna Farris. I teach at USD 298 in Linton, Kansas. I do business 7th through 12th grade.
My name is Andrea Nix, and I teach Math 7 and keyboarding at Eisenhower Middle School in Liberal, Kansas.
I'm
Bernice Albers.
Go ahead, Bernice, sorry.
I'm locked up. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Bernice Albers. I actually teach English at Chase County with Jeremy, but I taught business there for over 30 years. So I'm functioning as a mentor in this role, I guess.
Perfect. And who is our other mentor on the call?
Jill Buettgenbach. She's my mentor from Madison.
Yeah. I introduced myself.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, mentors, for being here today to kind of talk with us. And I think, I don't know where we want to start off, Jeremy or Jacob. You guys want to kind of take the lead from here?
We can. I know at least with the mentor. I don't know if there was any general advice you had. So everyone here is a business content teacher. I don't know if you guys had any specific advice for us for singular content, and then otherwise we can kind of ask you guys questions. I know I wrote down a couple that I was curious about. I didn't know if you had any general stuff, or I didn't know if you guys had.
I don't mind letting you guys start, and then if I can dive in if I think of something. I have all kinds of things to say, but probably not really that interesting. So.
Oh, that's fine. I know one of my questions was, at least I feel like for me, so most of my business classes were doing a lot of stuff online. Often, I just was curious if you thought during COVID, when I think most of the schools were online, if you thought it was easier for your business classes to transition to that, since you were probably already more online compared to other teachers, or if you thought it was tougher just because so much is online. I guess, I don't know, I'm curious about kind of your thoughts on that. If you thought business classes lent itself more to online learning, remote learning versus some of the other classes.
I think they do lend themselves easily or easier to online learning, but
You guys are going to have to get
I
off.
don't. I miss
because the internet. You've got to get off, Natalie. You guys can't do it. I can't do my meeting.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. But I still think that we're best when we're with the kids. And so maybe content wise, it might have been easier for me. Although, there's just so much that you can't do when you're online.
I think Google Classroom made it easier to go remote because you could push everything out to that and kids knew a place to go to get their assignments and a way to communicate with kids. So that definitely helped. Some classes were easier because we're kind of online anyway, we're technology classes, but like I had to struggle with Microsoft Office because we teach the desktop Microsoft Office that has all the features. And then when we went online, the kids only had 360 and it doesn't have all the features. Like we're supposed to do pivot tables in Excel and we couldn't because Office 360 doesn't have that. So there are definitely some limitations because of technology and not having kids on the right equipment. But I think for the most part, the business education teachers were pretty prepared for that.
And then my second kind of part of that is if you did have a kid who, they had a quarantine or gone for a while, did you guys were like record yourself doing lectures? Like once everyone was back in class, did you record it or did you find that they were, I guess, more or less able to follow along in your class? Did you have to do something you didn't think of beforehand to adjust to try to make sure students were understanding what you guys were trying to accomplish in class?
I kind of didn't hear all the question, but I think what you were asking was if there were a lot of special arrangements, situations, circumstances, work involved with kids that may or may not have been participating. Is that?
I just didn't know if there were things that you realized once the kids were gone, like everyone was back in class and realized kids were gone. Do you have to do extra stuff you didn't realize? Like, do you have to record yourself going over things? That way they kind of got that interaction that maybe the classmates asked, or I was just curious kind of what went differently than you thought originally when things went remote.
I think people think that it's easier maybe to prepare and it's, when remote and you don't, you just hand out worksheets or put them on Canvas or whatever. But I think looking back, the surprise was how much prep we had to do and a lot of the conversion, especially if you've been in it for 1,000 years, to try to transition everything to online. But it's been good because, looking back now, there's a lot of stuff that I do and have prepared digitally and online that I may not have otherwise done that way.
I definitely think getting kids to participate online was a huge challenge for me that I didn't really see going into it. Most of our kids just had black screens. We weren't allowed to mandate them turn their screens on. So a lot of times you were just talking to a bunch of black screens. So to even like get some engagement and know they're there, like you had to use the chat box, you had to bring your pet to class a day, everybody show your pet. You had to do something to get them engaged, to get them to turn their screens on, because half of them were in their beds in their pajamas with their screens off. And it was just a huge struggle to engage. We're in the classroom, you can get them to engage because you're there in person and they're not hiding behind a black screen.
Quick follow-up on that, Jill. You said you couldn't have them turn the cameras on. Was that a policy from the school or was that just a teacher's choice, or how did that come
It was
about?
a policy from the school because they said some students' living environments were like not very good and they didn't want them to feel forced to show that somehow. I don't know. I wish we didn't have that policy. It was a struggle.
Some of my teacher friends in certain districts, to your point, mandated that the kids were on the first and last 10 minutes of each class with their camera, which is still not the same as the whole class period, but that would be tough to have, 8 out of 10 black screens every single class all day and wondering if you're getting through to them or not. So that I couldn't imagine that piece right there, because that would definitely be, almost just closing your eyes and teaching at no fault of your own, obviously.
Yeah, I think that whole thing about wondering if you're getting to them or not was huge. Because sometimes even if their faces were there, their minds and everything else was not. So yeah, it was a am I getting to you or not question every day.
I have a question. What resources do you find are more helpful in teaching in business? Is there something that in your years of teaching that you found has been the most beneficial for your students, or even the least? I mean, is there something that you tried that was like, oh, that was not a good resource, I shouldn't use that, I wouldn't recommend it? So
I'm really probably too old school, but I anymore the last 4 or 5 years, I made them cover their hands. I know that's a minor thing, but keyboard covers became a big part of keyboarding with 7th and 8th graders. I just fought it and fought it and fought it. Obviously their habits got worse and worse. You know, the more you get kids that have played games their whole life and have their own complete system of keyboarding. So how they go about it. So adding those, and I, looking back, I'm not sure that's the best thing, but it did at least force some of them to become better at it, even though they didn't believe that would really work. So that's a silly one. Other resources, Jeremy can speak to this about the accounting program that we used. We used Southwestern and did it almost all online. What was the name of that, Jeremy? That
The
Applia.
put me on the spot.
Yeah, Applia.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and that was I don't know if any of the rest of you have used that software, but that's one that once you got it figured out, it was pretty helpful. I'm trying to think of what else. We did a lot of stuff with the entrepreneurship group. Oh, now I can't think of what they're called, but we did an entrepreneurship competition and so forth, which Jeremy has continued on. And I think that was really effective. It got a lot of our community members involved and gave a lot of kids some incentive to do some things that they might otherwise not. And we had a community that's very, very supportive of it with some pretty solid dollar amounts that they gave to the kids. So that's something that I think was really good for some kids. And those are also not all of them, but they're also kids that might not do some other things too, but boy, they've got some crazy entrepreneurial ideas. So
With the program that Bernice was talking about was the Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge and the Kansas Entrepreneurship Challenge, which is hosted through Kansas State University and some donors, specifically the Masons and a few others, where students create a business plan, create a pitch, do a little trade show, and they compete locally to get eligible for a state competition. And they all go together for a day at K-State and do a state competition there.
I'll share some of my favorite resources. I've shared some of these already with Jacob, but one of them is planbook.com. It's an electronic plan book. It's like $10 a year or something, so you'd have to pay for it. But it's just awesome because you can link like assignments that you're giving to kids in the plan book. So in the morning, when I get ready for my first hour, I just go to my plan book. I click on all the links to the assignments I'm going to give that day, and I just have them up so I can project them onto the screen and kind of go through the assignments with the kids. So it makes it super easy. I always start with the question of the day as kind of a bell ringer, and it's about whatever subject we're talking about that day. So if we're talking about credit cards or credit scores, my question of the day might be, what's the highest credit score you can get? And then I tell them they can't Google that they just have to guess, but a lot of them try to Google anyway. And then I give like candy prizes to those who get closest to the question of the day. And I just have all those on my plan book, so I don't have to go like find them in my Google Drive or whatever. They're just like right there. I can also like extend a lesson, like, oh, well, I didn't get through all that today. I'm going to have to keep, working on it tomorrow. I can just click a button and it just extends it over and it moves all my lessons over. Then I can copy my lesson plans from one semester to another semester. I can share them with another teacher. So it's just very usable, very editable. It's been just a lifesaver for me and just being organized. So I really like that plan book. I know my colleague still uses paper grade or paper lesson plans. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I change things too many times to like have paper. So I really like how you can edit that really easily. Also for those teaching personal finance or any career and life planning, and NGPF, which is Next Generation Personal Finance, is just an amazing resource. It's all free materials for teachers. They have complete lesson plans, or they just have activities if you just want to supplement what you're already doing. They have video resources. They have simulated games that the kids really like. They also have great PD where you can just sign up for a 1 hour webinar and you just get on about whatever subject you want to learn about. And there's a lot of interaction there. So they put you in breakout rooms. You can talk to other teachers, like, how would you use this resource? How do you teach interest rates or inflation or whatever? And so you get to dialogue with other teachers, which has been invaluable to me as well. So I really love NGPF and all that they offer for free for teachers. It's just ngpf.org. I think it's org, not com. And then they also have a Facebook group called FinLit Fanatics. And that's a great resource too. All social media groups I think are awesome. There's a business educators Facebook group. There's FinLit Fanatics. And teachers just throw out ideas. Hey, I'm going to be gone for a week and I'm going to have a sub. Like, what are some great ideas that you've done in the classroom that a sub could do while you were gone? Or, hey, I'm really struggling teaching this concept. Or do you guys have any ideas? Or do you have any games you play for this subject? So it's just a great resource for teachers to just talk with each other about what works for them. So I just love that resource as well. Also for personal finance, I subscribe to Morning Brew. It's an email newsletter, and it just gives you up-to-date current what's going on in the finance world. I don't have time when I'm teaching because my life is so crazy to like keep up with all that. And it just comes to my inbox every morning. I know the latest headlines on what's going on in the world in finance, and I can like use that to have discussions in my classroom. You can even have your students subscribe if you want them to get the same newsletter, and you can have them like start out discussions with like current events of what's happening in finance. So that's another really great resource that I use.
Yeah, the NGPF is amazing, and that's one I used a lot during COVID too, because it's already digital. It's just ready to go. I mean, that's what's amazing about those. Edpuzzle is a good one that I used a lot then too, because I don't know if you guys used it, but you make the kids kind of, it gives them a little quiz to take while they're watching or after they're watching, actually while they're watching a video, and you can either write it or use someone else's. So that was a lot of help too.
Another one I would add is Nearpod, which I was forced to learn to use Nearpod because of COVID. So some good things came out of COVID, I think. Like the question you asked before, I guess this would be one of them. How you said, what did you change in teaching online that now you are incorporating into a regular classroom? That's something that I did. I don't know if you guys have probably all used Nearpod because you're young and savvy, but I learned it through NGPF because they would do their webinars through Nearpod. So I learned how to use it, and then I learned how to create my own. And they also provide Nearpods for their lessons. And then you can go in and you can tweak them. Like, oh, I don't like that video, I'm not going to show it. You take that slide out, or you found a video that you really like that you want to incorporate, or you have a question you want to ask in the slide, you can just add that in there, or an activity. There's matching games, there's fill in the blanks, there's all kinds of ways that you can engage with kids as you're giving them content. So I really like Nearpod. When I do it in class, there's two versions. There's the teacher led, where you advance the slides and they can't move on until you move on. And then there's self-paced. So whenever I would do one in class where it was the teacher ran one, I would always, after the class, I would post a self-paced one of the same one. So if they were absent, they would just go in and click on the self-paced version and they could go through it on their own at home if they missed class. So I like Nearpod. To me, it got the kids more engaged because they actually had to like do things on their screen, not just listen to me lecture for 30 minutes or whatever, but they were like engaged in their learning as they were receiving content.
So I have a question about planning. In the 801 class, we're talking heavily about national standards and state standards and CTE pathways. And I feel like business classes are so much muddier than ELA or math. It's just not cut and dry. And the clusters all look different. And did you guys use those standards and pathways to structure your lesson plans? Or did you go by textbooks? Or I'm not worried about the content. I am truly terrified about making. We have two other teachers, Logan and another gal at our school teaching, but there's really not a lot of prior content to work with. We don't even have textbooks right now for two of the classes that I teach. And so like we go back to work August 8th and I don't even know where to pull this stuff from. I feel like I'm a lost little sheep wandering, trying to figure out how to lesson plan. So and I'm also getting a lot of feedback, use textbook, don't use textbooks. People are like hardcore textbooks or their textbooks are ancient, don't even try. So I'm really interested what some veteran business teachers have to say about that.
Well, Jeremy, I know faced that exact same thing, and I was even there in the building to help him, but because I sort of had a lot of it in my head, a lot of it already put together. I mean, certainly I left him everything I had, but I didn't really use much of a textbook. And a lot of it was because there are such good resources out there. I mean, like NGPF for personal finance. And I mean, I was always trying to find things, and it was, it's nice too. I have a computer lab literally in the classroom. So everything I did could really be, it wasn't like a classroom without a lot of technology or trying to make things work on their iPads or whatever. But I think it's does your district want you to have it? Do they care? Do they have a feeling either way? No.
I don't know. Logan could
really
probably.
No, they really don't care. They just kind of want it. They want organized, obviously, but they don't have a preference whether it be book or hard copy. I did both this last year in my finance class. I started off with the book, realized how strenuous and time consuming that was, along with other classes to plan and the other duties I have to do as well. So then the second semester and really the second half of the year, I didn't use the website that you gave. I used the one through Pitt State, I believe, and that helped a lot. That took a lot of freed up a lot of time. To where now I think I'm going to use this other one this year. It's a little bit more in depth than the one I used the second semester.
Yeah, I was never married to a textbook. Now I had textbooks certainly at my disposal, and I guess what textbooks always did for me was to give me the structure kind of how things ought to look and kind of what the professionals have deemed to be the most important things to teach. And then I sort of use that as the springboard for what I taught and the resources that I found to do so. But yeah, Jeremy, I'm sure you can share her pain, just because I feel like I left him, without a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, as far as the standards go, standards are so. You still have to make your own. I mean, you still have to do your own thing with them, and that's. I've struggled with that starting English is, there are these fabulous ELA standards that everybody loves, but that's not how to teach. That's, so So I guess really I use the book as to give me direction, the standards to give me maybe the sense of what the general expectations are, and then I do my own thing.
I just agree with Bernice. I pretty much do the same thing. I haven't used a textbook really for years. I think mainly because my district doesn't like spending the money. They like free resources. So I did, I've taught for 30 years and came into Valley Center 3 years ago and came in, I'm like, okay, where are the textbooks? And the principal came in and opened a closet and they were all like 10, 15 years old. And I was like, I don't think they were using these. So yeah, I just kind of use the textbooks as a guide, like Bernice said, just kind of as an outline to make sure that I'm hitting all the things I need to hit, and then just kind of find your own resources to fill in the gap. I mean, I'm sure some teachers use textbooks successfully, but I feel like this day and age, students don't really like textbooks. There's such a technologically savvy generation that books just seem antiquated to them, and they like online resources better, is what I have found.
Something I expect.
I don't care who goes.
Whenever I first got into my position, I think the biggest thing in like trying to figure out what you need to plan or lesson plan for is to figure out which pathway you're going to be. If you're doing like a CTE pathway, and that was way easier than like to kind of follow along because it gives you all of those things. And I don't know if any of you guys are like probably do the CTE thing, but I get emails from Jamie Reinhart like every day, and she's like constantly posting stuff, and that's like a subscribe thing.
Another resource I just thought of is Teachers Pay Teachers.
Yeah.
It's tpt.com, I think. And that also is a great resource because there's just resources that other teachers have developed for their classrooms that have worked great, and then they share them with other people. Now, most of them, they cost, but it's pretty inexpensive, and they do have sales every once in a while, like 25% off thing. And there are some free resources on there. But I've used a few of those things just to jumpstart me when I started a new position, and it just gave me some ideas that I could just piggyback off of.
Yeah, TPT is awesome if you haven't. Yeah, it's amazing. And I think that in order to put stuff on as a teacher, you have to submit something free every once in a while. And so there's not a lot of free stuff, but it's really nice, especially when you're really struggling. I've got this topic, I don't know what to do. You can usually find something for $2 or $3 that, will at least kind of get you over that hump of what you're trying to accomplish in class. There's some amazing stuff out there, but it's not free, most of it.
On Monday and Tuesday, I was at a conference from KCEE, and they mentioned the Teachers Pay Teachers, but they've also got a lot of free resources online as well for videos and content to look at for consideration if that's going to be interesting as well. Or for EconEd, I should say.
We have some limited time left, but if you guys could think back to your first day of teaching from the business content purpose, what would be one thing looking back over your career to say, if I had that knowledge day one, life would have been better? And I know it's kind of a deep-rooted question, but I always look at that, especially in the world experience. A lot of people forget that in somewhere 20, 30 years, that the new people, everybody had their day one, no matter what they were doing. And I always try to ask those people, if what you know now, what would you have liked to know day one that you believe would have made you more successful?
All right, my first day of teaching was 35 years ago, so I'm very old. And a lot has happened in 35 years, but one memory that stays with me and has stayed with me forever is the first day of class. And here I was, all of 22, trying to figure out what this is and not knowing if these kids were even going to listen to me. And I passed out the textbooks and I thought, we're just going to read through the intro together. And I called on different kids to read, and this kid couldn't read. or very limited. And he just stumbled through trying to sound out. I mean, this is high school. And I was embarrassed for him. And I just went in thinking all these kids are like super educated and they're all smart and they're all like achieve at the level I achieved at when I was in school. And I had to take a step back and remember a lot of these kids don't have the basics. They don't have the foundations. And the kid came up to me after class and said, please don't ever ask me to read in class again. And I was just crushed for him. And I was so embarrassed that I put him on the spot like that. So I guess I just would have gone in thinking more of the different levels my students were going to be at and not just assuming they were all going to like know what I think they should know.
I think I remember people telling me you've got to be really tough in the beginning and, you know, lay down all these laws and then by October you can ease up. And I guess looking back, I wish I'd have just been more consistent the whole time and not tried to be something I wasn't, or, you know, or even, and you do, I'm sure, you know, you go through kind of cycles of you've got different kids you've got to be really tough with, and then you've got kids that, you know, you can be more relaxed with or whatever. But I think I wish I'd been more consistent. Of course, I was ready to join the circus after my first year, so I may not be the best person to ask, but maybe I guess if you're struggling, it gets a lot better. I really think it does. So all of those times when you wake up in a cold sweat thinking, what am I going to teach tomorrow? They still happen, but you don't worry about it as much. It's like, oh, I'll pull something off of here. So I'm sure none of you guys do that though. You all have your lesson plans probably all made right now. So, but no, I think consistency and the biggest thing that I wish someone had told me also was that the most important thing is that one-on-one relationship. That's how you change lives. That's how you affect kids. The content, hugely important, obviously, but not nearly as important as the relationship with the kids. And I know that's all cliche and, you know, oh yeah, but it's really true. You can't do anything if you don't have a relationship with them. And a one-on-one where they know you and you know their name and that kind of thing. So.
All right, guys. So we have about 2.5 minutes.
Don't get so.
Oh, sorry, Bernice. Did you have something else?
Oh, no, that's okay. Just don't sweat the small stuff. That would be my best piece of advice. Another cliche, but it's true.
Okay, well, we have about just over 2 minutes left because of Zoom has new rules that you can't have meetings over 40 minutes unless you have an upgraded version. So is there any last minute questions anybody has or anything else that anybody wants to share before our time is up?
I have one last quick question that I think anybody could answer. When I was in my business classes in high school, we did a lot of like presentations and projects that way, like group projects. And I'm going to really focus on like public speaking and for my just business essentials classes. Does that work for you guys? Because this will be my first year. Like, I know kids, they just want to sit on their phones all day, but getting them up in front of a class and speaking, has that worked good the past couple years?
I know last year when I taught, they didn't really want to do it, but the more that you made them, the more comfortable that they felt doing it. So, I mean, I think just like when we were in high school taking classes, we never felt comfortable with it, but our teachers still made us do it. So.
Last year I did a lot with the TED Talks, and my business communications class, they actually got to do a TED Talk back as part of one of their assignments.
That's a really great idea. I feel like after COVID. Sorry, I was just going to say after COVID, I saw a kind of a switch in kids' anxiety levels. There's a lot of kids that came back after COVID that were just had a lot of mental illness, anxiety issues. And for the first time ever, when I did projects where they had to get up and speak, I had gobs of students who were like, please don't make me do it. This is going to shoot my anxiety off the roof. And I had never experienced that before in my 30 years of teaching. You know, you got to do it. You got to get up